Hello everyone, welcome back to Ukrainian Media Podcast, where we hold conversation with those who help us make sense of present by understanding the past. I'm Olena Solodovnikova, and today I'm excited to be joined by German journalist Jürgen Buch. Hello, Jürgen.
Oh,
I just wanted to start with German topics directly, and the first question is about that. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz has openly declared that Germany is returning and ready to defend peace on our continent. However, German youth has recently been engaged in a mass strike against the law of military service. In general, majority of Germans, about 58%, are not prepared to defend their country with weapons in the event of attack. And how do you explain such feelings? Can they be justified by the fact that several generations of Germans after the World War II were made to be pacifists?
there are many reasons, I think. Historically, you can, oh, let's put it like this. Can you show me one positive example of Germans with weapons in their hands during history? Can you imagine one example only? I think you
Uh,
can't. I think it's
I,
very
I
difficult.
can't. I can't. Yes, really.
Yeah, if we think about World War One, if we think about World War Two, we don't have to talk about it. By your own what it meant for Ukraine, for example. Ukraine was completely occupied, uh, yeah, by Germans and so on. So if we think about history, it's very difficult or impossible to find a positive example of Germans with weapons in their hands. And that's one reason I think that it's difficult for Germans to imagine Germans with weapons in their hands in a positive setting. Yeah, that's one reason I think. And of course, we had freedom movements, for example, in Eastern Germany in 1989, but without weapons. It was peaceful protest. They did not have to fight. And there were Soviet soldiers in Eastern Germany at that time. And if Soviet soldiers at that time had intervened and suppressed this peaceful movement, would anyone in Germany have fought then? Question mark. I don't think so. We have no positive experience with fighting and especially with fighting for freedom. Never in our history. You fought for freedom. The Polish fought for freedom. Yeah, they had resistance movements and uprisings and things like this. We had the French Revolution and the United States, its independence war and things like this. We in Germany did not have this. We don't have this mindset. Maybe that's one reason why it's so difficult for us to imagine that fighting with weapons could be something good or positive. Yeah. And talking about the situation after the Second World War, mm, and talking about Western Germany, after the war, we engaged in other political processes. We engaged in the European project of the European Economic Union, the European Community, the European Union, things like this. We could show our neighbors after the war, France, Great Britain, the Western neighbors, yeah, talking about Western Germany, we could show them that we are trustworthy again. We learned that it is successful building international relations on treaties, on compromise, talking to each other. Yeah, that's a very civilized form of dealing with each other. Yeah, and we were successful. And we were accepted again as a civilized nation because we built a successful and peaceful society. Yeah, I put a long story very short now. Yeah. Concerning Eastern Germany, it belonged to the Soviet world. And as you know, the Soviet propaganda said always after the war, this was a priori a space of peace, kind of anti-fascism and things like this. So we in the West and they in the East, we felt comfortable, yeah, with not thinking about fighting with weapons or so. And after the Cold War, uh, Germany was simply surrounded by friends, maybe for the first time in history, surrounded by friends. Uh, an exciting experience, and we simply thought that we can transfer our post-war experience of compromising, of treaties, yeah, and of dealing with other nations, that we can transfer this experience into the future. The experience of building international relations on treaties, the EU neighborhood programs, things like this, even dealing with Russia. Yes, in the early 19th, everything was unclear inside Russia. And we thought, I think, we simply thought in Germany that Russia just needs time. Yeah, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, it simply had to take a long time to overcome all these Soviet decades, all these problems a dictatorship has. Yeah, we thought it just needed more time and find its way to a kind of civilized way of living. A
Yeah.
mistake, we could say today, but I just try to explain what was the kind of thinking at that time in Germany in the 90s. Um,
But
yeah, I think we just
but what can we do with the new generation way of thinking about pacifism and how change it, this public opinion?
I think we should talk a little bit about this. They called it school strike. Yeah, not long
Yeah.
ago, many young people decided to protest against our new German law concerning voluntary military service for young men in the future. And I think even international media covered these school strikes. But if we think about numbers, if I'm right, more or less 40,000 pupils participated in this school strike, but we have more or less 9 million pupils in Germany.
Hmm.
So is it a mass movement or is it just a part of young people protesting? That's one thing. And the other thing is, I think we should not um, talk about these protests as an isolated phenomenon because we are dealing with a multi-layer debate in Germany concerning intergenerational justice. Because many young people say we were disadvantaged, for example, during the Corona period. Yeah, there were lockdowns, schools were closed, we had no social contacts. Society required all this in order not to spread the virus and not to endanger the elder generation. Yeah, but nobody asked us. The elderly people decided what we have to do. Another topic, we are talking about pensions in Germany today. And again, to put a long story short, we have some new laws now in favor of the elder generation. Yeah, they
Hmm.
get more money. Who has to pay for it? The younger
Hmm.
generation. Once again, nobody asked us, say the young people. Yeah. And now we have this security question, military service, things like this. Once again, the young generation has to take the burden, so they say it. Yeah, but nobody asks us, do we want this? What do other generations do for security in Germany? So this is these school strikes are part of a larger debate in Germany. And yeah, is it possible to change public opinion? You're right. It's a difficult question. And, you know, I'm not a prophet, of course. Since 2014, I say we, or parts of our German society, we are pupils. We are learning,
Uh-huh.
many of us. Because maybe you remember that I think in 2019 or 2018, I don't remember exactly, maybe 2017, the Green politician Robert Habeck was in Ukraine and he visited the front line. And he returned to Germany and said, we should strengthen our military support for Ukraine. What was the reaction in his party and all around Germany? A shitstorm. How could he dare thinking about this? Yeah. And if you remember, in February 2022, Germany thought about maybe 5,000 helmets could be okay for Ukraine. Yeah. And since then, we went uh, a long way, I would say. Yeah. Later came tanks, German tanks, Patriot systems from Germany, Iris-T, things like this. I just explain what I see. I don't say that everything was right or something. I still would say too little and too late from Germany. But seen from the German perspective, it's a long way and it's a huge progress. Yeah? So it's a very difficult debate. And if you had asked me 10 years ago, would Germany provide massive military aid to Ukraine or to some other country? I would have said, no, never. Yeah. Not because it's my opinion, just because I see the um, debates inside the German society. And another point, do you know who is the most popular politician in Germany? I
Friedrich
think
Merz?
you
No?
guessed it. Yeah. It's our Minister of Defense, Boris Pistorius.
Ah, Pistorius, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. That's very interesting because he's in favor of military aid for Ukraine and he says it very openly and decisively and so on. And maybe surprisingly, he's the most popular politician. And we have ratings each month, and since he's in federal politics, he's the most popular politician. So there is something changing in Germany, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah,
Um,
and also German parliament has approved military reform, and country plans to double the size of armed forces. And could you elaborate a little bit about what else will be changed in German army, the next steps?
that's a very difficult question.
Yes,
Um,
I know. And is it really country switching to the military economy? How do you feel in it about the all
yeah,
news last
I
1 or 2
think
years?
I think we cannot talk about military economy in Germany because we are very far from this. Um, yeah, even if we will spend 3.5 percentage of our GDP for military in the future, that's the plan. Uh, this amount of money lags behind, for example, health or pensions. Pensions again, yeah. Pensions make up, I think, 12% of our GDP,
Mhm.
and health service 11% of our GDP. So the money we spend for military now, and even if we spend much more in the future, this is not really a military economy, I think. Yeah, that I think that would be something that Russia is a military economy, for example. Yeah. Ukraine, of course, spends a lot of money for military as well. That's clear. It's clear why, yeah. But we are far, far from this, I think. But once again, the mindset is changing, I think. For example, in 2013, only more or less 20% of the population in Germany said we should spend more money for military. In 2022, already 60% said it's necessary to spend more. So I think society sees that it's necessary to act. To which degree this will, or to what all this will lead in the future, it's difficult to say. Of course, the military will be larger. mm, Maybe the equipment will be better. There were many jokes in Germany about helicopters, planes, and they can't fly,
Mhm.
yeah, because we don't have enough spare parts to repair them and things like this. Yeah, um, and disastrous ways of I don't know how to say it. Disastrous ways of getting military material. Yeah, decision-making processes are so long and so complicated, not effective, and all this is going to change. But how fast and how effective this will be, this is a very difficult question.
Yeah, but is it only jokes or is it really based jokes? Like situation is not so good in reality.
Yeah, the jokes are based on real problems. Yeah,
Mm,
maybe you know we are now building up a brigade in Lithuania
mm-hmm,
with up to 5,000 soldiers, and it's very difficult to find the equipment for these 5,000 soldiers. Yeah? To have a constant presence there in Lithuania, it's very difficult. Or each time we have maneuvers, exercises, international exercises, we have to look around in all over Germany to put together the necessary military equipment to take part in these exercises, in these NATO exercises. Then there are these discussions of possible multinational contingent of soldiers for Ukraine. You heard about this in the so-called negotiations of peace plans, yeah, talking about that. And the question is, how could Germany contribute to this? How many soldiers actually do we have
mm-hmm.
ready to go somewhere to Ukraine or somewhere else? And this is a very difficult question, yeah.
Yes, and now could you imagine the real war with Germany and Russia? For instance, a couple days ago, I read a book about again the Second World War situation, and there the author compare the intensive of military actions in different countries. And yes, it was very intensive in the USSR countries, and in the Europe. Sometimes the Germans were like. During slightly actions here sometimes. I'm not say that it's no war in Europe at all, of course, but sometimes they say, okay, that is like in France, sometimes, okay, Vichy regime and so on. So, could it again repeat like this scheme with Russia and German in modern society? Not so intensive military actions and so on.
Well, I'm not a prophet, yeah.
Yeah,
It's
no.
um or maybe I didn't get your question because I'm not quite sure what's your point.
My point is, could you imagine the real war in Germany with Russia now in the territory of Germany with bombardments, with so on, or it could be like a Cold War and so on.
Sorry, yeah. And no, a real war, I think a real war as we know wars from history or as we experience, unfortunately, now the war in Ukraine. I cannot imagine this. Although Russia is sometimes threatening, you know, all these Russian propaganda shows, and they say, "Yeah, our
Yeah.
rockets can reach Berlin in 5 minutes" or something like this. Mm, I think that's um, not a realistic scenario. But what we see and what you know and what we all know is this hybrid warfare. We see it today, cyber attacks against German institutions as well. Mm, drones, yeah, flying around near German airports or things like this, acts of sabotage. We see all this today, and I think this could intensify. Yeah, and this is already a kind of war. Maybe we have to understand that war in the future doesn't mean lots of tanks and lots of bombardments as we saw it in during the Second World War. But we or Russia has and uses other means to not only to threaten other countries, but to damage the economy, the mindset. The Russian propaganda is working in Germany as well. You know, we have unfortunately lots of people mm, supporting ideas of dialogue with Russia, buying cheap energy from Russia, yeah, peace with our neighbor Russia. So who is living between us and Russia? Yeah. Poland, Ukraine, many other people are living there. So who is our neighbor? Russia? Or who? Yeah, these are questions, but the debate is going on and Russian propaganda is working. And this is a kind of warfare as well.
Yeah, unfortunately, but I just wanted to move to another uh, problem, the issue of immigrants, migrants, and it's very topical for Germany now. Do you really think that migrants really pose such a threat to the economy of Germany, or it is a problem that they undermine German unshakable cultural tradition?
It's the question, do you ask me or do you ask Germans in general? Or if you ask politicians from our right-wing populist party, AfD, for example, or uh, the other populist party, BSW, then you will get another answer as I will tell you. Of course, they say it's the end of Germany, and Trump says it as well. Yeah, Europe is failing, and Russian propaganda tells the same story, maybe in different words. I would say no, it's not a threat to our economy. Um, but of course, the topic of immigration, the question of migrants, once again, is a multi-layer question. We have so many different migrants, yeah, and generally, they are, if they are living in Germany, they are consumers. They spend their money here. That's not bad for our economy, yeah, if they buy something here and not elsewhere in the world. So it supports our GDP, I would say, generally. Even if here are, of course, migrants and they don't work, they receive money from the state. Of course, it's public money. It's my money because I'm working for that money. They get it, but they spend it here. So anyway, it's a kind of circle for the economy. Yeah, that's one thing. But most migrants are working. Um, and many of them are experts, doctors at hospitals, engineers, and so on. We do not have enough qualified working force in Germany. So we need migrants. That's not only my opinion. You can ask economic experts and other people. And on the other hand, we also have many migrants, and they are not highly qualified. They often have low-skilled jobs, by the way, jobs Germans don't want to do. Yeah. So this is also a kind of contribution to our economy. And talking about cultural traditions, I would say um, we still have our Christmas markets, the church bells are ringing, so everything's fine. No, not everything's fine. That's not true. Of course, we have criminal clans from Lebanon, for example.
Mhm.
We have radical Islamistic groups and things like this, yeah, spreading their Islamic propaganda as well. That's a problem, yeah. But I think we have strong institutions in Germany, police and so on. And I think Germany can cope with these problems because we have these institutions. And looking uh, re regarding migrants through history, we always had migrants in Germany. Think about French migrants, the Huguenots from France. Think about migrants from Poland throughout history. Look at our family names in Germany. We don't have only Müller, Meyer, Schulze. We have also de Maizière, Lafontaine, Wieczorek. Yeah, doesn't sound German. Yeah, it
Mm.
derives from this migrant history, and of course we have today many migrants from Ukraine, obviously, and of course that's a question as well. You know all this. In 2002, the EU activated this temporary protection directive. Yeah, and different EU member states found different ways of supporting Ukrainians who came to the EU. Germany decided to provide them mm, uh, the same. How should I say it? They provide Germany, provide support to Ukrainians as to Germans. Yeah, they receive the same money. In other member states of the EU, it's different. And that means we spent, for example, in 2024, we spent 6.3 billion, not million, but billion euros for social support for Ukrainians. That's a lot of money.
Not.
Yeah. Um, Ukrainians receive this support only if they have financial problems. If they work in Germany, they don't get this money because they can live independently without support from the state. But it's a lot of money, and there are always discussions since 2022. Is it okay that they get so much money? And so on, especially about men from Ukraine, you know, because some Germans say, why are they here? Why don't they fight in Ukraine? Why are they here living from our money? Yeah. And again, this is a populist discussion because we know very well that many Ukrainian men are legally here. Yeah, because maybe they are ill, maybe they have many children or other reasons, and they are allowed to legally leave Ukraine and live somewhere. Yeah, that's other question, but populists in Germany use this topic as well. And I think um, our new government, Friedrich Merz, yeah, it's less than 1 year, so I say it's a new government, um, made a decision to give Ukrainians less money in the future. They will receive the same money as asylum seekers get in Germany. That's less. Yeah. They just don't want to spend so much money in the future for Ukrainian refugees in Germany. Mm.
Yes, it's in terms of people who came to Germany after the April of this year, and now you discuss the another options how to cut costs for the previous refugees from Ukraine, so on. But yes, the question for Ukrainian refugees and for another was and now are not equal. And what is the reason why you change these options, this procedure? Have Ukrainians failed to meet expectations of German society? So a lot of people they are lazy, they are not, don't work, and so on. Oh, that is not a problem of Ukrainians at all.
Think it's not, first of all, a problem of Ukrainians, because many Ukrainians integrated very well in Germany. Yeah, they are working, the children are going to the kindergarten, to the schools, they are learning German language and things like this. I think there is no general problem with Ukrainians in Germany. Um, Once again, I think it's just an inner German discussion. The federal government has money problems. Yeah, we generally have money problems in Germany at the moment because our economy is not working so well, and so on and so on. And it's a little bit tricky, I think. The federal government can now save money because it says, okay, Ukrainians get not this money they get now, but as if they were asylum seekers. The point is, the money Ukrainians get until now comes from the federal budget. The money for asylum seekers comes from the budget of our communities,
Mm.
yeah, and the Bundesländer, the federal lands in Germany. Yeah, so the federal government is saving money, but the
Mm.
communities, the cities, the Bundesländer, they have to spend more money. Yeah, it's a kind of, I would say, tricky way for the federal government to save money. Yeah, that's my opinion. And
Mhm.
second point, my opinion as well, I think it's a mistake because if we talk about the integration process of Ukrainians in Germany, it's successful until now. Because with this federal money, this federal support, Ukrainians have access to our so-called job centers. They organize German language courses. They organize job opportunities and things like this. If you are an asylum seeker, or if you are treated as an asylum seeker, you do not have access to the job center. You do not have access to all these integration structures. And this is a mistake, I think, because we want or we require integration from Ukrainians and other migrants, but we put them in this scheme of asylum seekers where they do not have access to these integration opportunities. I think it's a mistake. Another question, maybe that's more a question you should discuss inside Ukraine. Integration, of course, is important, but if Ukrainians integrate more and more into the German society, into the German labor market, this is a heavy or a huge brain drain for Ukraine. Do these people one day, will these people one day return to Ukraine if they find jobs here, if they know the language, if the children went to school here for years and years and maybe start to study here and to work here? It's a brain drain for Ukraine and maybe a very large problem in the future for Ukraine.
Yes, I completely agree that it's a very large problem, and like one and more of the 1 million people from Ukraine now in Germany, and most of them mothers with children. And also, I just wanted to ask you about the situation with retired people in Germany you mentioned previously. So, can migrants help Germany cope with the demographic crisis? Do you discuss this question in Germany?
Yeah, we discussed this for years and years and years. And I think immigration can slow down this process of aging in society, but it cannot stop it. Because if you look at the statistics, we have, I think, 1.5 children per woman in Germany. That's not enough. Yeah. And migrants adopt to our way of living over the course of time. Maybe at the beginning they have more children than the average German woman, but during time it occurs that they adopt to our way of living or way of thinking or way of having children. So in the long term, they don't have more children that we have. And so I think it's just this process of aging cannot be stopped via immigration. It helps, yeah, to have more working force, but it doesn't solve the problem.
Yes. So I just want to jump to another topic, the Poland. You have been following the situation in Poland closely, and actually, you know, after the election of President Nawrocki by a narrow margin over his opponent, it became clear that Polish society is divided. Why did this happen? What do you think? Because yes, some Poles are radically opposed to Ukrainians. Now, probably you know about the last, like a funny case with the bear in the Przemysl. It was in Ukrainian flag colors, and they changed this. His clothes of this Christmas bear because of the people who said from the Przemysl, oh, that is not good for us. So, what did happen with Polish people now? Why they don't understand that Ukrainians are some kind of people who have support and we military and now we are like a fence between the Poland and Ukraine against
Uh,
Russians.
Yeah, a very interesting question, but once again, it's a multi-layer question, and I don't know where to start because you asked about why is the Polish society divided? That's one point, and the other point is the question concerning Polish-Ukrainian relations. So, should I
Okay,
answer to
let's start
everything or
with dividing because yes, I really
divide?
when I told with Polish people, yes, I really feel this. Some people like okay, just continue to fight with and we support you, and some people oh no no no, Bandera and so another shit. Sorry.
Yeah. Uh-huh, uh-huh. Generally, I think Polish society is to a high degree divided today because of inner Polish discussions. That's one topic. Yeah, it's a historic question about the dispute about the legacy of the solidarity movement in Poland. Yeah, because Nawrocki and Kaczynski and the Peace Party uh, interprets this history differently as, for example, Donald Tusk, the prime minister, and his party. Yeah, that's a long question. Maybe you followed the Polish news yesterday. I don't know. But yesterday, President Nawrocki decided to remove the famous round table from the president's palace. The round table was the place where the Solidarity movement, the opposition movement, and the Socialist Polish Party discussed about how to change the political system in Poland in 1989, and in resulted in more or less free elections and the first free government in the socialist world in Poland. A huge success, I would say. But now President Nawrocki removed this famous table, and this is, as I see it, a symbol of this division, how to interpret Polish history. Yeah? Because Nawrocki and Kaczynski, they say this round table stands more or less for a kind of compromise with the Socialist Party. Yeah? No hard cut, but yeah. And Tusk says something else. By the way, I think it's amazing what happened in Poland in 1989. So I think it's a mistake to remove this table as a symbol. But that's my opinion. That's another question. So one thing is this division inside the Polish society about their uh, legacy, their historic legacy. Yeah. So it's a one discussion. Another point is, and now I come to these Ukrainian Polish questions. If you ask Nawrocki, if you ask Tusk, if you ask Kaczynski, no one of them is supporting Russia. No one of them is supporting Orban in Hungary. Yeah? I think by by nature, Polish people cannot be pro-Russian. This is an important point, I think. Apart from the nationalist rhetoric, maybe of Kaczynski and Nawrocki nowadays, this is something else. This is once again for inner Polish discussions because we have in Poland Konfederacja. Maybe you know this very right-wing party. It's an opposition party, but it's I'm not sure, 10 to 15% voted for this party. And now the others, Tusk, Kaczynski, Nawrocki, they have to deal with this phenomenon, with this problem. So they are mm, taking parts of this nationalist argumentation and try to put it into their own political system. Yeah, that's one thing. But nobody there is really pro-Russian, for example. So generally, both sides, both large political parties, are pro-Ukrainian. And it was the Kaczynski government that provided tanks immediately to Ukraine and many, many other things, and opened the Polish infrastructure for the military support of Ukraine. Yeah. So generally, I would say uh, there is no decisive Polish political party mm, against Ukraine. Yeah, that's one thing. I think it's important to understand this, even in Ukraine. Another question is, where should I start? Because it's a difficult question once again. Um, another thing, yeah, another thing is history, and history is not history, but history is very present. And maybe you guess what I want to talk about. It's
Okay,
Volhynia.
yes, but
Yeah.
Volyn massacre, that is the question with now Ukraine is very openly for that, and we just give opportunity and start the processes with exhumation of Polish people in our territory than they asked, and there are no question about it, but they continue to push the situation in domestic politics. As you told, yes, I think that now Polish politicians try to solve their internal problems in their politics to take votes of some people from different parties and just use Ukrainian question only, like okay, in domestic politics. But now we have to talk about the more global helicopter view of Polish people for against Russia, against the whole big war. But they stopped to talk about that. Okay, we will talk about domestic politics. Wow.
Yeah, but I think you shouldn't underestimate the importance of this topic for Poland. Yeah. Even if we look at language questions, you used the English term massacre now talking about this. As far as I know, in Ukrainian, it's tragedia. Yeah. The Wolinska tragedia, I think.
Yes, we use
Tragedy.
term tragedy. We never use резня. It's Russian term, of course.
Mhm. Aha. But in Polish, it's rzeź, it's massacre. And
Mhm,
that's a difference in the use of language because a tragedy just happens. A massacre is intended by someone, has a
mhm.
purpose. Yeah, and that's a difference in interpretation. And maybe Poles might ask, is it or was it only a tragedy? So no one is responsible for what happened? Why do Ukrainians call it a tragedy only? Yeah. Is there something they want to hide? Question mark. Yeah. I don't say it's my opinion. I just say what I find in Polish narratives. And again, another important topic may be Operation Vistula
Mhm.
after the Second World War. Yeah. Akcja Wisła in Polish language. I think in Ukrainian as well, Operacja Wisła.
Yeah.
Tak. And naively, one could ask, Vistula, it's a river. Are we talking about ecological topics? No, we are talking about ethnic cleansing, yeah, about
Yes,
deportation of Ukrainians from
but
Poland.
yes, sorry,
So
but it was
language,
provided by USSR, by Stalin regime, not by
yes, yes,
Ukrainians
yes.
directly.
I, 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 I know, yeah. And it was a state-organized Polish action initiated through all these Stalin politics and so on, yeah. But this is a great point. I think all of us, and in this case, especially for example, of course, Ukrainians and Polish people have to just rely on historical research, yeah, without political implementations. Open-minded, cool, without emotions, look at the historical um, materials. Yeah? What did the USSR require or do? Yeah. What did Ukrainians do? What did Polish people do? Yeah. And I'm not trying to talk about heroes or they did, but we didn't. Yeah. Look at every aspect, open-minded, cool-hearted, not emotionally. not with ideology. I think this uh, might be a painful process for each side. Yeah? Because maybe Ukrainians made mistakes, maybe Polish people made mistakes, maybe the USSR has responsibility, and so on. And I think only if you and Poland, in this case, find a way of openly discussing all these historic topics and find ways of maybe commemorating or educating people, uh, this will be fruitful. And why is history not history? I'm talking as a German now, yeah? And you know our German history. And it was very difficult after the Second World War in Germany to talk about our history. Yeah. And it took a lot of time, and it was not always successful to talk about the Second World War. And even nowadays, we have many blind spaces. Even Ukraine is a largely blind space in our German discussion. Because mm, if Germans talk about the Second World War, they talk about maybe France and so on. Yeah, occupation of different countries and of Poland, and they talk about Russia. Yeah,
Yes, the
everything in the
mistake
East
is,
is Russia.
yes, some people in Germany associated the USSR with Russia directly and don't keep in mind that Ukraine was the part
Hmm.
of
Yeah,
the USSR.
yeah,
Okay, I
yeah,
just
and
wanted, yeah,
yeah.
sorry.
Maybe I could I add some more? Yeah,
Yeah,
and you
okay.
see this historical misunderstanding of the Soviet Union as Russia influences our debate about support for Ukraine today as well. Yeah, because many people say in Germany, no war with Russia. Yeah, because we did so many. Yeah, it was a war and it was terrible, but it was Ukraine that was occupied completely by Germans. And if we don't understand this, we we didn't understand everything in Germany. So it's a German example how historical discussions influence the present discussions. And I think maybe it's the same with Poland and Ukraine. Yeah, just simply look at historical facts, not on ideology. And this is painful, maybe for each side, but it prevents future misunderstandings. And not only this, if you follow the Russian propaganda, they deal with this topic of Olenia as well. Yeah. And if we or you or Poland, if we do not mm, have our common narrative about historical things, it opens the door for Russian propaganda, for Russia dividing us. This is like poison, this Russian influence in our discussions. We can sort our problems and our debates without this Russian influence if we do it actively. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I just wanted to say that now Ukraine is completely rethinking the history between the Poland and Ukraine. And yes, its process continue. And I just wanted to ask you a little bit about present situation with Poland, that now uh, as I don't mistake, Poland has been excluded from some important diplomatic consultation on the future of peace agreement with Ukraine. What do you think? Why is it the reason why it happened now?
I think this is my very personal opinion. Yeah, this is not based on sociological or political research. It's my opinion. I think the new Polish president Nawrocki made simply mistakes concerning international politics. He's not experienced. He's not a politician he wasn't a politician throughout his lifetime. This is one thing. The other thing is that the Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk was very much in favor of Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, even during the election campaign in the United States. I can understand this, yeah, fully. uh, I can understand this fully, but you know Donald Trump, and that he reacts very emotionally to um, this kind of Polish behavior of Donald Tusk. That's one thing. And Donald Tusk was in Berlin lately. There, Poland was included in these talks. Yeah, and Donald Tusk said, I looked for for his statement, and I quote it. It's very short. And he said, I don't want to steer emotions, but let's say it plainly. Not everyone in Washington, and certainly no one in Moscow, wants Poland to be present everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, because because Poland was so decisive in supporting Ukraine, it still is. Yeah, that's another question. And because the Polish government didn't make friends in the Trump administration. So I think the US, I have no evidence, but I think the US mm, wouldn't be happy to see Poland at the table.
Mhm. So yes, it's pity, but yes, I would ask you directly question and just talk your opinion. Which NATO country could Russia attack the next? Because yes, we have a bunch of talks about Baltic states, and you know that hot air balance fights carrying contraband, which regularly freeze fights at Vilnius airport and so on. Uh, but yes, do you think which NATO country could be Russia attacked the next? Is it will be Baltic states?
We should ask Putin. Maybe he
Yeah.
knows.
No, I just don't
It,
want to ask him,
no,
really.
of course, no. If you ask me, uh, I should say I'm not sure. Because, as you said, we could expect that the Baltics are the next victims because it's so easy. Small countries, although NATO countries, but anyway, small countries. We have this Suwalki gap, very difficult strategic landscape. Yeah. And things like this, we see already these cyber attacks, these balloons around the airports, the whole situation in the Baltic Sea. So yeah, it might be obvious that Russia is looking very directly in this direction to the Baltics. Maybe Lithuania, maybe Estonia. Imagine we have the city of Narva. Many people talk about Narva, where the population is mainly Russian speaking. Imagine there appear these green soldiers like in Crimea, for example, yeah, with weapons, but no, we are not Russian, yeah. Things like this. Possible, maybe possible, but maybe it's too obvious. Maybe Russia chooses something else, and that's could be Norway, the islands in the north there, Spitsbergen. Yes. Anyway,
Oh,
there's already a Russian settlement because of old treaties, Norwegian Russian treaties. Who knows what happens there? Or maybe somewhere else where nobody expects it. It's a very
yes.
difficult question.
Spitsbergen is very interesting thought, and some people suggest that could be Moldova, because I visited Moldova before the elections on this summer in June, and it was unfortunately a lot of pro-Russian thinking people who talk that okay, even not only pro-Russian, they say okay, we support Ukraine, but we are not wanted to be enemies with Russia and so on. And I feel like okay, that is, I can imagine, I could imagine this time that Moldova green people from Russia, and they say okay, we are open for you, and without weapon we will add for your country in some kind of conditions and so on. So, just for the end of our fruitful discussion, I just wanted to ask you about the big release of Belarusian hostages of Lukashenko's regimes. And it's clear that these prisoners were exchanged for the withdrawal of sanctions of trade between Belarus and European countries. And is it a good deal? And what is the consequences of it? Because okay, such as a dictator as Lukashenko, and will he detain even more people to use them for business negotiation and could use this scheme against the sanctions or something like that?
Yeah, I think we face a dilemma here. I have to say, I am very happy for every single prisoner to be free because I think we can imagine, or maybe we can't even imagine the situation in these prisons and camps in Belarus or in Russia. It's horror, I think. And so I'm very happy for every single person who is released. Yeah. This is one side. So I'm very happy that more than 100 people are free. Yeah. But on the other hand, you're completely right. Um, and this, by the way, was very quickly emphasized by Polish media after the release, because on the very same day, um, the Lukashenko regime um, uh, took new prisoners. 5 or 6 people were imprisoned for political reasons that very day. So it's a kind of, yeah, it's a kind of, it's economics for Lukashenko. He knows he can trade human beings to the free world, and he gets something, less sanctions or things like this. And this is a problem I see in this case because it was an American deal in this case, made by these American deal makers, as I call them. I don't call them politicians. They are deal makers, in my view. They have no political experience. They have no strategy except of making deals. Yeah. And this is a problem. Quick deal, nice pictures, but is there any strategy to change Belarusian politics? Maybe we don't know about it because they hide their super sophisticated um, strategy, but I don't see it. Yeah. It's a dilemma. It's a dilemma. Again, look at history, look at German history. Western Germany, Eastern Germany, Western Germany bought political prisoners from Eastern Germany, more than 30,000 people. And Western Germany paid more or less 3 billion German marks, so 1.5 billion euros. A lot of money. Of course, that supported the GDR, the Eastern German regime. Was it right? Was it wrong to get 30,000 people released? It's a dilemma, yeah. I have no definite answer.